So for this cardigan, I use Lion Brand's Shawl in a Ball yarn, and this colorway is the Soothing Blue. It is a 58% cotton, 39% acrylic, 3% other fiber. For 150 gram ball, there are 481 yards, and it's a medium size 4 yarn. So I've really enjoyed the way that this yarn gradates very gradually throughout the skein. And then I've also liked just the feel of the texture of the yarn as it knits up. So it really surprised me how subtle the texture came once you get it into the blocks and onto a crocheted collar or cuff. So with that, we'll start with the pattern. So as you pick your size, you'll look at the width of the garment. Because it's an open cardigan, it's hard to get an all-around circumference because there will be some overlap in some of the sizes or how you wear it. But if you look at the width, that would be the same width as what's on the back of the garment. So typically for a sweater, that would be times that by 2, and that would get your circumference. Depending on how form-fitting or loose you want, you can go from the ease on that. For each pattern, you have a layout, and each of the blocks represent 1 square of the motifs. Some of them are of different sizes. Some sizes will use the 4 round square motif, and some will use a 5 round motif. And then some will also use that 4 round but a narrow version, and some will use the 5 round but a narrow version. And that is how I was able to get the different widths throughout the sizes without having to change drastically each of the patterns. So by picking that, you'll see which pattern you need, which size you need, how many blocks of which kind, and each block is made the same, subtle variations, and we'll explain that. So I'll begin with the regular motif, and both the 4 round and the 5 round start and proceed the same way. And all you do is you start with the slip knot on your hook, and I want to start a little bit way up because you're going to start with the magic loop. And I like the magic loop because that gives you a nice tight center compared to chaining your center and then working your first round into that chain circle. I could never get it tight enough, or it's too tight to work into, or it's too loose. The magic loop, I've found I could get it nice and tight, but it's still easy to create that first round. So I have my length, and I'm going to take my hand and drape it over. The tail is on the back side of my hand, and I'm wrapping it around counterclockwise my 2 fingers. And then once I get that 2 rounds, I'm going to go in, make sure you have your yarn and not your tail, and you make 1 slip stitch around, and then you chain 1, chain 1 more, and that's going to act like your height determining for each of the rounds. And then you wrap your hook and you go into your loops and pull 1 loop up the same height as that 2 chains. And I'm going to do that 2 more times for a total of 3. And then, so I have 3 of those tall loops and then my beginning chain all on my hook, and I'm going to wrap my yarn and pull 1 loop through and then chain 1. And that is like the first little puff that you make. Of each round, you repeat those same steps. To do your next puff, you're going to wrap your yarn, go into your loops and pull 1 loop up the same height as your first puff, and you keep doing that for 4 of those big loops. So that's 3, and that's 4, and then pull 1 loop all through what's on your hook, chain 1 to close that out. So now you can see there's 2. You want to do that for 8, a total of 8 puffs. My loop's getting too bigger than I'm used to. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And you close that. Okay, I've finished my 8 puffs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's my tail. Now the magic with the magic loop, you want to kind of pull that tail until you start seeing which strand starts moving. You want to take that strand and pull from the opposite side that was moving to. So it was starting to go in that way. So I want to pull out this way. And what that does is it tightens that other loop where my slip knot was. You can get that tight, and then you pull your tail to pull that loop. And you have a nice tight center for your beginning round. So now I want to close out this circle. So I can see my chain. That was the top loop of my chain for that first puff. And then the loop, whenever I closed, made the chain stitch after pulling a loop through all those loops on the hook, I want to go on top of that and just make 1 slip stitch. And then with my thumb and finger, I kind of break apart the 2 puffs so I know where the 1 puff begins and the other puff ends. Without turning my work, I'm going to chain 2 again. So I'm going to make a puff for the next row. So the first puff, you start with the chain 2, you wrap, and I'm going to go right in between that first and last puff, the previous row, and pull up to the same height as that chain. So do that 2 more times, 2, 3. So I have 3 of those big loops in my chain, and I'm going to pull through and chain 1. I'm going to do that a puff in between the next space. To do this one, you just pull up to that same height and you make 4 of those big loops. Pull through, chain 1. Now this is where we start breaking off. Instead of a circle motif, we want it square. So the first round where we do that, you make 1 double crochet in that top puff, in that next puff top. And then you make a puff in the next space over. 2, 3, 4, pull that through, chain 1. And I'm doing that 1 more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 2 puffs, a double crochet, 2 puffs. Go into that top puff below and make a double crochet. And I'm just going to repeat that 2 puffs, double crochet, all the way till I have my 4 corners kind of starting to come together or show up. 2, 3, 4. Again, I have my 2 double puffs made, so I'll make my double crochet. then for my last side, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, and then my last double crochet. And then again, I want to close it by a slip stitch. So there's the chain. I want to go in the top of the puff, not the chain, to make that slip stitch to close the round. So to begin my second round, again, it's that chain 2. You're going to go in between your puff and that last double crochet. Do your 3 large loops. Pull through, chain 1, and I'm going to do a puff in each of the spaces before I get to that double crochet, my next double crochet. So that's 3, 4. So that was my last puff in the space between the previous row puff and double crochet. Now because we're going the same direction as the row before, that top of the double crochet sometimes gets a little hidden. And you want to, I kind of shoved the puff over so I can get into that top of the double crochet. So this time I'm going to do double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1 again. So I have 2 double crochets coming out into that, from that 1 double crochet of the row before. Wrap my yarn, go into the space right after the double crochet, and make another puff. Chain 1, double crochet or puff, so any space you're going to make a puff, and then you need to make your double crochets when you come to the double crochets. 2, 3, 4, so again, pull over so I can get to that top of the double crochet, double crochet, chain 1, into the same loop, double crochet, chain 1. Now you can really start to see that corner starting to form. Mine do curl, but as you sew them together, they kind of pull out that center portion and start to lay flat. So here's my next puff. So there's the last double crochet in the previous row. Again, go on top, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, back to the top of the first puff for our slip stitch, and now we're going to start our last row for the 4 rounds. So again, chain 2, do your 3 pull-ups, 1, 2, 3, You're going to make a puff in each of those spaces between the puffs. Okay, so there I'm come to that first corner with the 2 double crochets. I'm going to go into the middle of those 2, crochet chain 1, or excuse me, double crochet chain 1, double crochet chain 1 into both of those, and then back into my puffs. So I'm making my last set of double crochets in my last corner, and then a slip stitch, and then for your 5 round, so 4 rounds you would stop right there. So that would be how you would finish. You would just pull a loop through, snip your yarn, and bind off. If you are doing the sizes for the 5 rounds, you do exactly through the 4, and you're going to repeat that last row of doing your first starting puff, and then continuing with your normal puffs through till you get to your first double crochet. Okay, and I'm going to repeat what I did on my last round, where you just make your 2 double crochets, chain 1 in that middle chain of the previous row, and then go into your puffs. So fairly straightforward once you get to know the patterns. Start out with the magic loop. You make your 8 puffs around. The next row will be your 2 puffs, double crochet repeated around. The next row is the 3 puffs, the first set of V double crochets, kind of how I told myself I need to make a V. And then the 4th round, the 4 puffs, a V, and then if you need the 5 rounds, 5 puffs and a V. And that's also a really easy way to make sure you didn't miss something, you didn't miscount from one of the rows or skip something, if you end with either the 4 on each side or the 5 on each side for each of the size patterns. All right, so those are your standard blocks that majority of your sweaters will be out of. Now to get the narrow versions, you're just taking off a set of puffs. And it sounds a little bit trickier than it actually is. You start exactly the same way with the magic loop for your narrow blocks. You go around your finger. I'm going to go into that. Oh, start with the wrong tail. With the tail of the yarn, slip knot on my hook, going around till I get 2. Make sure I have my working tail. Make a slip knot, chain 2, slip stitch, chain 2, and then make that first puff, 3 pull-ups, pull through and chain 1, and then your puffs of 4 pull-ups, so it starts just like your normal blocks that you've been making. Can't count to 4 and talk at the same time. But instead of that first round having 8 puffs, you're just going to do 6. So I have 3, I'll make 3 more. So there's my 3 and 3, so 6. Just going to scoot those down so I can really see my 2 strands for my beginning loop. I'm going to hold where my slip knot was and start pulling that tail. You can see which loop is starting to move in, that tight one. I'm going to pull out from the opposite side of where it was moving in to tighten that, and then you pull your tail. And then a slip stitch in the top of the first puff to close that first round. So very, very similar to that first round of 8, only this time 6. And again, you're going to start the exact same way as we did before. A chain 2, yarn over and insert between that first and last puff. Pull up 3 of those loops, yarn over and pull through all. And I'm going to make 2 again. 2 puffs total, so just 1 more. Pull through. And then this is the first round, so it's just 1 double crochet in the top of that puff. Chain 1. This time, to make it narrow, instead of doing 2 puffs for our side, I'm just doing 1. So that's my 1 puff, and go right into making a double crochet into the, so I've made the double crochet, chain 1 into the top of that puff, and then I go do my side that's opposite the 2 puffs, so I want to make 2 puffs. One more. So what I do there is I just spread apart all the loops, and that way I can count the larger loops that are going into wrapping around that space. Otherwise you gotta keep, okay, that's from the previous one, that's 2, 4, 6, 8. You would need 8 plus the previous one to know you have your full wraps for a puff. So there's my double crochet, my 2 puffs. Do a double crochet. And then my last puff for my single side. Chain 1. And a double crochet in the top of last puff, chain 1, loop them all together. That's my second round. Just like before, chain 2, make your starting puff with 3 yarn pull-ups. Go in between the spaces for each puff. Okay, so this is where we make that first V, or the 2 double crochets and then 1 double crochet. So I'm going to go in, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, same stitch, double crochet, chain 1, and then I'm off to make more puffs. So this side now will only have those 2 spaces since it only had the 1 puff. So this round there will be 2 puffs on the side. And then my 2 double crochet, chain 1s in 1 spot. You just repeat that around. All right, so that's my last V. Close out the round. And then for this would be the 4th round, so the final round for the 4 round blocks being narrow. And it's the same as the 5th round as well. You just repeat this one again. You make your starter puff. Do puffs in each of the spaces. So you can see it's very much like the other ones. It's the only thing different is that beginning starting 6 puff instead of 8, and getting it to where you'll have the 1 less on each side. So 1 on one side and 2 on the other 2 puffs. 2, 4, 1 more. Okay, so again, you have your V from the 2 double crochets and the 1 stitch. And I'm just going to repeat that double crochet chain, double crochet chain, all in that 1 little opening between them, and then go on into my puffs and do that around. So nothing new, nothing too different. The hardest part is keep having to count to 4 over and over. I'm pretty sure some of them might have had 5. Some of them may have had 3. But when they're all put together, I can't tell. So I'm not going to stress about it. And I hope you don't either. Okay, I'm going to end this one after the 4th round. For your 5 rounds, go ahead and go repeat that last one more time. I'm going to bind this off. And there you can see that last V on my corners. I like to kind of give them a little tug, Helps kind of straighten everything out so you can tell. So the 4 on one side and the 3 puffs on the other, and that is how you get, this has part of the 5s going around, but you can see where the 3 to the 4 is just slightly narrower. And you do that on 2 sides, it takes it in just enough to make a difference whenever you have it front and back. So that's your narrow. It's the same width with the 4 going across, but it's just a little bit narrower. So once you get everything made, I've already started on this one. I've woven in all of my ends so that it doesn't get so crazy with all the ends going everywhere. And I laid them out on the floor so that I could see kind of where everything was going. And I didn't want, you know, 2 whites right next to each other. Actually, I'm going to move some around because I don't want this dark one right next to those 2. And I use safety pins just to kind of hold them all together, keep them all going the right side together. This section is for my sleeves. I'm making a size small, so I have 2 rows of narrows. And so I have my 3 puffs lining up, connecting to each other. On this way, I don't want that there, I want that there. My 3 puffs connecting, and then I connect the 4 sides of the puffs to the 4 sides of my regular squares. So this will go through here. So as you can see, I've already started one stripe of connecting all the blocks together. I have been starting at one end and going up the same directions, and that's to help with these corners where everything connects. It will stay common throughout so that I'm not having to figure out which way I need to connect and which block and so forth. So to connect on this side, so I've started on this end, and you can tell that because your slip knot will be towards one of the squares. When you end, it will be in the middle between the 2. So a little trick on how to remember where you're at. Okay, so again, take a slip knot, and you're going to go through that last V, which is your corner, and make a slip knot, chain 1, and I'm going to go into where I'm connecting that next block into that corner. I'm going to actually yarn over, make a double crochet, and pull through those 2. Now I want to go into my next stitch, which is the first double crochet. I'm not going to complete that last yarn over where I pulled through the 2. I'm going to yarn over, go into my other block, go into the top of that double crochet, and they're alternate because they're going in the same direction, so it's however it works. I don't know if it's physics or math or what, but it's going to be the loop in front on this side and behind on that side. Yarn over, pull through the 2, and now I'm going to pull through all 3. And I go into my next space, make that partial double crochet. I was on a space on this one, so I want to go into the space on my next block, do a partial double crochet, and then pull through both loops. I'm going to remove this one so I can work easier. Okay, So I've done the corner, I've done the first double crochet, I've done the space, and now it's the puff. So each one of these acts like a stitch, and you just keep, and it's easy to keep track of where you're at and what you've worked, so you know, okay, I've done a puff, so now I need to do a space, and it's the same on each side. So if you're going in a space on one, you're going to go into a space on the other. It's essentially a double crochet two stitches together. It's just each of your stitch is on a different square motif. So I'm going to go through there. And you just keep working on down the line, stitch by stitch, block by block. Okay, so we're coming up to the corner of this block. Now I'm at my first double crochet. I'm going to go ahead and do that first double crochet stitch on each block, just as I would a typical stitch that I've been doing so far. But now on the corner, I want to go into this corner, your first block corner, but I'm going to skip over and do the opposite diagonal corner. With the double crochet two together. And then I'm going to go, so I'm done with these two blocks, I'm going to go straight into the double crochet for this set of blocks. Okay, so you can start to see the double crochet corners. I'm going to go diagonal between the centers of the two blocks, and then the double crochet connectors of the same across. So just those two corners, the space in between the two diagonals, the space in between the two double crochets of each block is where you're going to cross. You can see previous row, that connection between those two spaces as well. And then whenever you come this way, that's when you will connect your other diagonals. So I've done the two double crochets, and now I'm into a space. So I'll go into my space of that one and double crochet. Did I do a full double crochet on that? And you just keep on doing on down the line, block by block. And eventually, after a couple of them, I remove my safety pins. I use safety pins. They stay in. They're cheap. I've had them around for various projects, so I have plenty of them to fit on this project. And you go connecting them around. And then once you block it, these ridges will flatten out some, and you can decide if you want the ridges to be on the outside surface where it's shown, or if you want it more flat. You get to decide. It's a reversible sweater. Haha. Always fun when you make things two different ways and get options. Okay, so I'll show you one more diagonal. This is my last space. So I'm going into the top of the double crochet, top of this double crochet. Kind of looks like the chain, but it's the double crochet. Okay, so now I'm going in between the V of this block. I'm done with the one I had been working on. So now I'm going to go into the V, the one diagonal, stitch that together, and now I'm going to go into the double crochets again as my first stitch of the two blocks that are connecting side by side. So that was the double crochet, now the space. Okay, so only two connecting stitches on this one. I have 3, 1, 2, 3 over there. One less over here because the diagonal. So that will give me the diagonals to connect when I go this other way. All right, let me finish that and we'll show you that. Okay, so I've come on down to the last square. I've done the 2 double crochets on each one, and I'm just going to finish out on those corner stitches, that corner space between the V's, and bind off. All right, so now I'm ready to go on the opposite direction, and that is simply the same way. And I will say, whenever I did these, I kind of moved around between the sweater and all the sleeves so that I could get different colors. It wouldn't just be the dark blues all the way across. So you just kind of have to play with how the yarn is changing, what color it is, and where you want that color to be. Okay, so again, just like before, start with the slip knot and a slip stitch through that first space, chain 1, you go into the space of the opposite block, make a partial double crochet, and then pull all the way through the top of the double crochets of the block. Now into the double crochet of the opposite, all 3 of the loops pulled through. Now I'm in the space after the double crochet of the blocks and pull those through. So nothing new yet, just stitch by stitch. Okay, so I'm doing the double crochet stitches of the 2 blocks. I'm going to go in between the 2 V's of the one I'm currently on. It was not worked previously, and I'm just going to go over that connection into this V. and make a partial double crochet and then pull all 3. There you can see where that connection is made into that V, that chain space. So I'm going to go into my double crochets that are mirrored across. Connect those. Now I'm in my chain spaces between, right by that first puff. So nothing different, just you got to work across the connection you did the previous direction. Okay, so once you get all of that done, only other information to tell you is for my collar, I had narrow strips on the inside edge. Some sizes you won't have this, you'll just have 1 or 2 normal squares open. But if you have a narrow square connecting to a full block's width, just go directly to the end of the corner of your narrow block. So I have a stitch for the connecting double crochet to a puff, and then that corner stitch is going into the chain space. And that would end my row because I ended at that corner of the narrow block. And you just end there. But connecting these rows, I've started in the corners. That chain space between the double crochets, I've started there. So you have a little bit of an undone edge on these square blocks. That will become part of your neckline. You'll add your collar. So those will cover in, but just keep stitch by stitch working over till you get to those corners. Same thing whenever you join your sleeves. Depending on how yours are, the seam may join edge to edge. It may be off center. It may be off center underneath the arm, but you just go line up how you would like and do stitch by stitch, ending in that corner stitch, that chain space of my narrow block. All right. And if you want, you could have had these connect all the way down. I didn't. I did the sleeves and then joined them. So now to seam it, I am going to join, so you can see my half panel. So here's my neck edge, my sleeve that's folded over. I'm going to join, since mine kind of mirror image, and I don't have one being at the bottom alone, I'm going to join mine all the way through here and then continue down for both sides. Once you have that done, everything joined together, I'll show you how to do the neckline and the cuffs and the hem. So there I have everything kind of blocked together, everything's attached and gone through. For the sleeves and around the side, I did not carry around one of the bands all the way through with that crossover. So I just did like you would through the middle of the corner, that V, and then did 3 double crochets across that connection, double crochet 2 together, 1 on each side and then 1 towards the middle. Sometimes it leaned towards one side, and then did again in the V of the next block and continued on. We'll be doing that on the edges as well. But before we start with the hem and around the neckline, I want to show you a little bit of the prep work just to make it a little bit easier. For the collar, so this is my neck edge. Here's the front panels that will go down along the front and be open for the cardigan. We'll want to mark 3 areas, 2 on each side, 1 in the center for all sizes. And this is where you're going to make increases so that your neck banding and trim opens up and lays flat and doesn't just come straight up. But you need that extra dimension around for your neckline. And then it'll fall straight against, or you can fold it over or drape, however you wish to lay it. We'll also be showing you how to increase around each of the corners, because it's all made one circular between what goes up and around the neck and what goes around your bottom hem. So you need that miter type seam so this corner continues laying flat. So we'll show you that. So to begin, let's mark where you're going to need your increases. So for all sizes, I have these little stitch markers that lock, which I'll be traveling soon, so I can lock them in place and know that they won't fall off. But you're going to need one at the very middle of your back. So I have a 4 round block for my center back. So I'm going to go right in between those two. And I'm going to leave it open for now so that I can move it as I go. If you had where 2 blocks join, you would want to put it in between that center ridge where that joint is. With all sizes, you'll be doing where your front and your back meet. So I'm going to put one on that side and one in the center of this side. So that will give a nice little increase kind of towards the shoulder seams and in the middle, and then it will continue on straight. All right, with that marked, here is my loop that I had not bound off from that edge seam. And you can do this with a slip knot on the hook. But all you're going to do, get that tightened back up. All right, so I have my loop from continuing this join that's still live. If you have a slip knot on your hook, go ahead and insert it and make one slip stitch so that it really anchors in. And you get a nice loop. And then for everyone, chain 2, and that is your first beginning chain for a double crochet. And from here on out, you're going to make a double crochet in that one stitch, because we have a double crochet in the center. So that 1 bar across, that double crochet from the join, we're going to double crochet in that. Double crochet in the V, that center area. Double crochet in the double crochets, and in each space, in the top of each puff. Kind of sounds familiar, just like as we were doing the joins. You just make a stitch in each of the stitches around. You'll want to do this till you get towards your 2 to your first corner. Okay, so I'm coming up to my first corner for the front, and I know that this is going to be my corner stitch. So I need to stop 2 stitches before that. So 1, 2. So I need to do the space right after this next puff. And now I need to start the increases to make this width continue out to join as we head back up the front. So in the top of the double crochet, I'm going to make 1, 2. So I made 2 in that stitch, and now I'm going to make 2 in the center. So that increases along that side, and I'm going to mark that last double crochet that I made. And I'm going to want to do, now we're heading this way, I want to make 2 more in that center V. And I want to mark that first one I made. Because I want to know which ones are my corners. So that is my corner. And then I'm going to make 2 more in the top of my next double crochet. So you're wanting to increase 4 double crochets, 2 on each side, because we got to get around that corner. And then you continue up, 1 in each spot, like we've been doing, until you get to your next marks. Okay, I'm coming up to my first mark for my neckline. Make that in the side. I'm going to go ahead and, for this purpose, I'm going to go ahead and take my stitch marker out and set it to the side. For those sizes that have an increase on your first row, you will be doing 3 double crochets through that center mark. And I'm trying to go through that last loop that I made. There we go. So again, increasing by 2, but all in the same stitch. And then I'm going to mark the center loop, the center double crochet of that trio, so that when I come back around, I know that's where I need to make another increase. For some sizes where your neckline based on your block width is too wide, this first row or first 2 rows will be a regular stitch in those, but keep marking that stitch so that when you do start your increase, you'll be increasing your 3, you'll be doing the 3 double crochets, increasing by 2 in the stitches that you've already marked, and you know that's still coming off your center. All right, so then you just keep on going and you do that around, and you keep going to your next increases, then you work around to your next corner, come back around. So I'm coming up to that beginning chain where I started my round. And you work up to the space right before it. So that's the space, double crochet, and then the V area. And I know I started in the center, so I'm going to make 1 more in that bar. And then in the top of the chain 2, I'm going to make a slip stitch to join those last 2. Then you're going to chain 2 again to begin your row and turn your work, and you repeat everything identical to what you did, except instead of going through the full stitch, you're just going to go through the front loop only. So instead of going through the full stitch like before, you're going to want to make your double crochets just through that front loop only. In every stitch, if you have an increase, those double crochets where you do 2 around the corners, or the 3 double crochets in 1 at the neckline, you're still just going into that 1 loop and making your multiple stitches in that 1 front loop. All right, so once you have your hem done, you'll want to start on your sleeves. And I have a slip knot on my hook because I did bind off on the sleeves and do not have a live working yarn. So I have the hem that I've joined all the way down the sleeve and all the way to the hem. And I'm just going to go through that center point because I want it nice and neat looking, since it's on my cuff and I'll be looking at it. And I'm going to pull up a loop. And pull it through my beginning slip knot loop. And then again, I'm going to chain 1 this time because I want to chain 2 together. So I'm going to make a partial bit of the double crochet and pull through both loops. And then I'm now to, so that went to the middle bar. I'm going to go into the middle of the V, pull up a portion, go into the top of my next stitch, which is the double crochet, make part of that double crochet portion, and then pull through all 3 loops. So I had 2 loops on this one, 3 loops on this one because we're carrying that stitch over. And then these will go the puff and the space, and you continue around till you get to back to your working edge. Okay, I'm coming to the end of this round. Have 1 more double crochet 2 together to make. I'm ending on a bar because I started in the center, and then I'm just going to go into the top of that double crochet 2 together, that first one that I made, and make a slip stitch to join. And then I'm going to chain 2 and turn. And just like we did on the hem, you continue making double crochets in each of those stitches, but just through your front loops. And this is what's going to make your cuff. It's going to make your sleeves pull in so they're not loose all the way down. And you keep on going around. And again, when you get to the back around, double crochet in that front loop of your last stitch, and then slip stitch in that first double crochet, chain 2, turn around, and keep on going through the front loops. I hope you've enjoyed this video and pattern as much as I have. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss out on any other tutorials by City Farmhouse Studio. Also, if you want to see more behind the scenes footage and videos and pictures, and just to know us a little bit more, follow us on Instagram, City Farmhouse Studio. Love to see you there and hear from you. Thanks. Bye.